The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the mahogany bar as Natalia Morgan wiped down the polished surface for the third time that hour. The Grand Sterling Hotel lobby was nearly empty at midnight, with only the soft jazz music and occasional footsteps breaking the silence. She glanced at her camera bag tucked beneath the counter, longing for the morning when she could escape to the harbor and capture the sunrise she had been planning for weeks. Photography was her passion, her purpose, the thing that made her heart sing. But passion did not pay rent in the city, and so she found herself here 5 nights a week, serving overpriced cocktails to wealthy guests who barely noticed her existence. Natalia had learned to fade into the background, to become invisible while observing everything. It made her a better photographer, she told herself. This constant practice of seeing without being seen. The elevator chimed softly, and a man stepped into the lobby. Natalia looked up out of habit and found herself staring longer than professional courtesy allowed. He was tall, with dark auburn hair that fell carelessly across his forehead, and he moved with the kind of confidence that came from never having to question his place in the world. His charcoal suit was expensive but rumpled, his tie loosened as if he had been wrestling with something more than just a long day. Dominic Ashford crossed the empty lobby and settled onto a bar stool with a heavy sigh. His blue eyes met hers briefly, and Natalia saw something there that surprised her. Exhaustion, yes, but also a profound loneliness that seemed out of place on someone who clearly belonged to the world of power and privilege. "Whiskey, please," he said quietly. "Whatever you recommend." Natalia poured him a generous measure of single malt, the good stuff that most guests never bothered to order. "Rough day?" she asked, then immediately regretted the question. Bartenders were supposed to listen, not pry. But Dominic smiled slightly, an expression that did not quite reach his eyes. "Rough year, actually. I spent the last 12 hours in meetings that accomplished nothing except proving that success feels remarkably empty when you are celebrating alone." There was something about his honesty that caught Natalia off guard. Most of the wealthy guests she served either ignored her completely or treated her like a confessional booth, spilling secrets to someone they would never see again. But Dominic spoke to her as if she were a person, not just a service provider in a uniform. "I understand that feeling," Natalia found herself saying, working toward something for so long, and then realizing the achievement does not fill the space you thought it would. Dominic looked at her with genuine interest. "What are you working toward?" "I am a photographer," she said, surprised by her own openness. "Or trying to be. Right now, I am mostly a bartender who takes pictures on the side." "Show me." Natalia hesitated, then pulled out her phone and showed him a few images from her portfolio. Sunrise over the harbor, an elderly man feeding pigeons in the park, a child's hands covered in paint. Each photograph captured a moment of authentic emotion, of real life lived without pretense. Dominic studied each image carefully, and when he looked up, his expression had shifted into something approaching wonder. "These are extraordinary. You see people the way they actually are, not the masks they wear." "That is the only kind of photography worth doing," Natalia replied. "Anyone can capture a surface. Finding the truth beneath takes patience and empathy." They talked for hours while Natalia mixed drinks she barely charged him for, and the night stretched on around them. Dominic told her about building his real estate empire from a small inheritance, about the pressure of being responsible for hundreds of employees, about the suffocating expectations of his social circle. Natalia shared her own story of growing up with a single mother who worked 3 jobs, of putting herself through art school, only to discover that talent alone could not pay the bills. As dawn approached, the conversation became more intimate. Dominic reached across the bar and touched her hand, and Natalia felt electricity arc between them. She knew this was dangerous, that nothing good could come from connecting with someone so far outside her world. But when he asked if she would like to see the sunrise with him, she found herself nodding. They walked through the empty city streets, as the sky lightened from black to deep purple to soft pink. Dominic held her hand as if it were the most natural thing in the world, and Natalia felt herself falling into something she knew would change everything. They ended up at the harbor where she had planned to photograph alone, but instead of taking pictures, she simply experienced the moment with him. When Dominic kissed her, as the sun broke over the horizon, Natalia forgot about the impossible distance between their lives. She forgot about being careful and protecting her heart. She simply surrendered to the connection that felt more real than anything she had experienced in years. They returned to his hotel suite and made love slowly, tenderly, as if they had all the time in the world instead of just these stolen hours before reality intruded. Dominic was gentle and attentive, treating her as if she were precious and rare. For Natalia, who had learned to expect so little from life, his tenderness was overwhelming. Afterward, they lay tangled together while Dominic traced patterns on her shoulder. "I do not want this to end," he whispered. "Neither do I," Natalia admitted, knowing even as she said it that morning would bring complications neither of them could avoid. Natalia woke to find the hotel suite empty except for a note on expensive stationery. "Had to catch an early flight for meetings. Last night meant everything to me. I will call you soon. Dominic." Below his words was a phone number written in confident strokes. She dressed quickly, tucking the note into her camera bag like a talisman. The morning shift bartender gave her a knowing look when she slipped through the lobby, but Natalia barely noticed. Her mind was replaying every moment of the night before, every word and touch that had felt like the beginning of something extraordinary. 3 days passed without a call. Then a week. Natalia told herself that Dominic was busy, that powerful men like him had demanding schedules. She did not call the number he had left, afraid of seeming desperate or clingy. Instead, she threw herself into her photography, trying to capture the complicated emotions swirling inside her. 8 weeks after that transformative night, Natalia found herself staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test in her tiny bathroom. Her hands shook as she set the test on the sink and sank to the floor. She was pregnant with Dominic Ashford's child, and she had no idea how to tell him, or even if she should try. The next morning, Natalia gathered her courage and dialed the number from the note. A crisp female voice answered after 2 rings. "Ashford Enterprises. Victoria Sterling speaking." "Oh, I was trying to reach Dominic Ashford," Natalia said, thrown off balance. "Mr. Ashford is unavailable. I am his business partner and handle all his personal calls. May I ask what this is regarding?" Natalia hesitated. Something about the woman's tone made her uneasy. A proprietary edge that suggested more than just a professional relationship. "It is personal. Could you please have him call Natalia Morgan?" There was a long pause. Natalia Morgan. The bartender from the Sterling Hotel. The way Victoria said bartender made it sound like an insult. "Yes, he asked me to call him." "I see. Well, I am afraid Mr. Ashford has moved on from his brief diversion. He and I are actually in the process of finalizing a merger, both professional and personal. I am sure you understand that someone in his position cannot afford distractions from his past." The words hit Natalia like physical blows. "I just need 5 minutes to speak with him." "That would not be appropriate," Victoria said coolly. "Mr. Ashford has asked me to handle any awkward situations that might arise from his conference trip. If you are calling about money, I can arrange a reasonable payment to ensure your discretion." Natalia felt anger flare hot in her chest. "I do not want money. I need to speak with Dominic about something important." "Everything important in Mr. Ashford's life goes through me now," Victoria replied. "If you continue to call or attempt to contact him, I will be forced to take legal action for harassment. Do we understand each other?" Before Natalia could respond, the line went dead. She sat staring at her phone, trying to process what had just happened. Had Dominic really asked Victoria to handle his awkward situations? Or was Victoria lying to keep them apart? Over the following weeks, Natalia tried twice more to reach Dominic, leaving messages that went unreturned. She even went to the Ashford Enterprises building, only to be turned away by security, who had clear instructions not to allow her access. Each rejection reinforced what Victoria had implied, that Natalia had been nothing more than a temporary distraction for a bored billionaire. Finally, Natalia accepted the truth she had been avoiding. Dominic did not want to be found by her. Whatever connection they had shared that night had been real for her, but apparently meant nothing to him. She was alone with this pregnancy, just as she had been alone for most of her life. Ruby climbed into Dominic's lap without hesitation, comfortable with this stranger in a way that made Natalia's heart ache. Some part of her daughter recognized her father, sensed the connection between them. "Will you come home with us?" Ruby asked. "I want to show you my room. I have princess sheets." Dominic looked at Natalia questioningly. She knew this moment was pivotal, that her answer would shape all their futures. She could send him away, protect herself and Ruby from potential heartbreak. Or she could choose to trust, to believe that the connection they had shared 2 years ago had been real and worth fighting for. "We should talk," Natalia said finally. "There is a coffee shop next door. Mrs. Chen, would you mind staying with Ruby while we step out for a few minutes?" The elderly woman nodded wisely. "Take your time. Ruby and I will look at the pretty pictures." Outside, the autumn evening was cool and crisp. Dominic and Natalia walked in silence to the coffee shop and claimed a quiet corner table. For a long moment, neither spoke, both processing the magnitude of what had just been revealed. "I loved you," Dominic said suddenly, "after one night, which should have been impossible, but I did. I woke up that morning knowing I had found something precious, and then I spent 2 years trying to convince myself I had imagined how special it was." "I loved you too," Natalia admitted. "That was why it hurt so much when I thought you had rejected me. I was pregnant and alone, and every day I wondered if telling you would have made a difference, or if you truly did not care." "I would have cared," Dominic said fiercely. "I would have been there for every moment, every doctor's appointment, every midnight feeding, every first. Victoria stole that from us, and I will never forgive her." "What happens now?" Natalia asked. "You are still a billionaire real estate mogul, and I am still a struggling photographer raising our daughter in a one-bedroom apartment. The gap between our worlds has not changed." Dominic reached across the table and took both her hands in his. "Then I will cross that gap. I will move into your one-bedroom apartment, if that is what it takes. I do not care about the money or the status or any of it. I care about you and Ruby. I want to be her father, and I want to be the man you deserve." "It is not that simple," Natalia protested. "Ruby has a routine, a life. We cannot just append everything because you suddenly appeared." "I am not asking you to append anything. I am asking you to let me be part of what you have built. I want to learn her bedtime routine, and her favorite foods, and what makes her laugh. I want to know you again, the real you, not just the memory I have been carrying around." Dominic's grip on her hands tightened. "I know I have to earn your trust back. I know I cannot just walk in and expect everything to be perfect. But please, Natalia, give me a chance to prove that what we had was real." Natalia looked into his eyes and saw the same vulnerability she had glimpsed that first night in the hotel bar. This was not a powerful businessman demanding what he wanted. This was a man who had discovered he was a father and was terrified of losing his daughter before he even got to know her. "Okay," she said softly. "We can try. But slowly. Ruby comes first in every decision." "Always," Dominic agreed. "She will always come first." They returned to the gallery to find Ruby asleep in Mrs. Chen's arms, exhausted from the excitement. Dominic carefully took his daughter from the elderly woman, cradling her against his chest as if she were made of glass. The sight of him holding their child made Natalia's heart swell with emotions. She had thought she would never feel again. Over the following months, Dominic became a constant presence in their lives. He showed up for breakfast on weekends, learned to braid Ruby's hair, and sat through countless animated movies about princesses and talking animals. He was patient and gentle, never pushing for more than Natalia was ready to give. He also handled Victoria's betrayal with swift efficiency. Their business partnership was dissolved, and Victoria found herself on the receiving end of several lawsuits for fraud and interference. Dominic made it clear throughout the business community that anyone who worked with Victoria Sterling would not work with him. Natalia's photography career flourished after the gallery show. Her honest, emotional style resonated with people, and commissions began coming in steadily. Dominic wanted to help financially, but Natalia insisted on maintaining her independence. They compromised on him setting up a trust fund for Ruby's future education and medical needs. 6 months after their reunion, Dominic proposed. It was nothing elaborate, just the three of them at the harbor, where he and Natalia had watched the sunrise years before. Ruby helped him present the ring, a simple band with a ruby stone that caught the morning light. "I do not need grand gestures," Natalia said, tears streaming down her face. "I just need you to keep showing up, keep being the father Ruby deserves, and the partner I can trust." "Every single day," Dominic promised. "For the rest of our lives." They married quietly a few months later in Mrs. Chen's garden, with Ruby as their flower girl. The ceremony was small and intimate, attended only by the people who had supported them through the hard times. As they exchanged vows with their daughter standing between them, Natalia reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this moment. A single night had created a child and planted the seeds of love. Betrayal and separation had tested them both. But ultimately, they had found their way back to each other, proving that some connections are too strong to be broken by time or circumstance. Years later, when Ruby asked about how her parents met, they told her the truth. About a chance encounter, a misunderstanding, and a love that survived against impossible odds. They taught her that family is not just about blood or perfect circumstances, but about showing up for the people you love, even when it is difficult. And every year on the anniversary of that first night, Dominic and Natalia returned to the harbor to watch the sunrise together, grateful for the twist of fate that had brought them together and the strength that had kept them together once they found their way back home. Natalia made an appointment at a community health clinic and began the process of preparing for single motherhood. She picked up extra bartending shifts, saved every possible dollar, and started documenting her pregnancy through photography. The images were raw and honest, showing her growing belly, her tired eyes, her hands cradling the life growing inside her. Her landlord, Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman who had immigrated from Taiwan decades ago, became an unexpected source of support. She brought Natalia homemade soup and practical advice, sharing stories of raising her own children alone after her husband died young. "Children need love more than money," Mrs. Chen told her. "You have plenty of love to give." Meanwhile, Dominic's life had continued on its predetermined course. Victoria Sterling had indeed orchestrated a merger between their companies, one that would make them the most powerful real estate partnership in the region. She had also made it clear that she expected their professional alliance to evolve into something more personal. Dominic found himself going through the motions of his life without really feeling anything. Board meetings, property acquisitions, charity galas, where Victoria stood beside him wearing designer gowns and a smile that never quite warmed her calculating eyes. He thought about Natalia constantly, remembering the way she had looked at him as if he were just a man, not a fortune or a status symbol. He had tried calling the hotel to reach her, only to be told she no longer worked there. His assistant had attempted to locate her through various databases, but Natalia Morgan was a common enough name that the search yielded dozens of possibilities and no clear answers. Victoria had assured him that some connections were better left in the past, that moving forward required leaving behind romantic notions of fate and destiny. 2 years passed. Natalia gave birth to a daughter she named Ruby, after the gemstone that represented strength and passion. Ruby had Dominic's striking blue eyes and Natalia's dark hair, a perfect blend of both her parents. From the moment she was born, Ruby became the center of Natalia's universe. Motherhood was harder than Natalia had imagined, but also more rewarding. Ruby was a curious, joyful child who found wonder in everything. Natalia documented every milestone with her camera, creating a visual diary of their life together. She had eventually quit bartending and found work as a photographer's assistant. Slowly building her portfolio and reputation, her big break came when a local gallery owner saw her pregnancy series and offered her a solo exhibition. The show, titled Becoming, featured her photographs from the past 2 years. Honest images of single motherhood, struggle, and love. The opening night was scheduled for a Friday evening, in early autumn. Natalia stood in the gallery wearing a simple black dress, watching people examine her work. Ruby was with Mrs. Chen for the evening, allowing Natalia to focus on the conversations with potential buyers and critics. She was discussing composition techniques with a collector. When she felt someone's gaze burning into her back, she turned and her heart stopped. Dominic Ashford stood at the gallery entrance, staring at a large photograph of Natalia cradling newborn Ruby in the hospital. His face had gone pale, his eyes fixed on the image with an intensity that made Natalia's breath catch. Their eyes met across the crowded gallery, and in that moment, everything else fell away. 2 years of separation, of unanswered questions and solitary struggles, collapsed into a single point of connection. Dominic moved toward her through the crowd, never breaking eye contact, and Natalia found herself unable to move or look away. "Natalia," he said when he reached her, his voice rough with emotion, I have been looking for you everywhere. I called you, Natalia replied quietly. Your business partner made it very clear that you did not want to hear from me. Dominic's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to fury. Victoria told me she never heard from you. She said I should accept that some people just vanish from our lives. He looked back at the photograph of mother and child. Is that baby mine? Before Natalia could answer, a small commotion at the gallery entrance drew everyone's attention. Mrs. Chen had arrived with Ruby, who had apparently woken from her nap demanding her mother. The elderly woman apologized profusely, but Natalia just smiled and took her daughter into her arms. Ruby was 2 years old now, a beautiful toddler with wild dark curls and eyes that were unmistakably Dominic's shade of blue. She looked at the tall stranger studying her with such intensity and tilted her head curiously. "Mama, who is that?" Ruby asked in her sweet, high voice. Dominic dropped to his knees in front of them, tears streaming down his face without shame. "My God," he whispered. "She has my eyes." The gallery had gone silent, every person there recognizing they were witnessing something profound and private. Natalia felt her own tears beginning to fall as she watched Dominic stare at Ruby with naked wonder and grief. "Her name is Ruby," Natalia said softly. "She turned to last month." 2 years, Dominic repeated, his voice breaking. "I have missed 2 years of her life." He looked up at Natalia with anguish in his eyes. "Why did you not try harder to reach me? How could you keep my daughter from me?" The accusation stung, especially coming from the man who had seemingly abandoned her. "I tried," Natalia said, her own anger rising. "I called your office 3 times. Your business partner told me you had moved on, that I was an awkward situation you wanted handled. She threatened me with legal action if I kept trying to contact you. Victoria said that." Dominic stood slowly, his expression darkening. "She lied to both of us. She told me you never called, that you had probably moved on with your life, and I should respect that." Understanding dawned on both of them simultaneously. Victoria Sterling had deliberately kept them apart, manipulating the situation to ensure Dominic remained focused on their business partnership and potential romance. She had intercepted Natalia's calls and messages, turned away her attempts to visit, and convinced Dominic that searching for her would be futile. Ruby, oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around her, reached out and touched Dominic's face with her small hand. "You are crying," she observed with a child's directness. "Are you sad?" Dominic caught her tiny hand in his much larger one and pressed a kiss to her palm. "No, sweetheart. I am actually happier than I have been in a very long time. I am just sad that I missed so much time with you." "Who are you?" Ruby asked. Dominic looked at Natalia, asking permission with his eyes. She nodded slowly, her throat too tight to speak. "I am your father," Dominic said gently. "I did not know you existed until just now, but I want to be part of your life, if that is okay with you and your mama." Ruby considered this information with the seriousness only a toddler could muster. "I always wanted a daddy," she announced. "Emma at daycare has a daddy who pushes her on the swings really high." "Can you push swings?" Despite everything, Dominic laughed through his tears. "I can definitely push swings. I can do a lot of things if you and your mama will give me a chance." The gallery owner, sensing the need for privacy, quietly ushered the other guests toward the back rooms to view more artwork. Mrs. Chen took a seat on a nearby bench, keeping a watchful eye but giving them space. Natalia sank onto the bench beside her, suddenly exhausted, while Dominic sat on the floor with Ruby, who had decided to show him her favorite toy, a small stuffed elephant. "I cannot believe Victoria did this," Dominic said, watching Ruby make her elephant dance. "I trusted her completely. She has been managing my personal affairs for 2 years. She wanted you for herself," Natalia said quietly. "I could hear it in her voice when she warned me away. She saw me as a threat to whatever future she had planned with you." Dominic looked up at her, his expression serious. "There has never been anything romantic between Victoria and me. She pushed for it, suggested it would make sense for our partnership, but I could never see her that way. My heart belonged to someone else from a single night 2 years ago." "You could have found me if you had really wanted to," Natalia said, needing him to understand her perspective. "You have resources, connections, people who could have tracked me down." "I tried," Dominic insisted. "My assistants searched, but your name is common, and you had moved from the hotel. Victoria assured me the search was thorough, and that you clearly did not want to be found. She said sometimes people from different worlds need to stay separate. He shook his head bitterly. I should have tried harder. I should have questioned her more. I was a coward who let himself be convinced that what we shared was too good to be real.